My wife brought her boyfriend to Christmas dinner. Not as a confession. As a guest. She introduced him to my parents like he was someone worth knowing. My father didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. What he said made her cry into her champagne flute while 23 people pretended to admire the tree. I'm Derek. 38 years married to a woman I thought I knew. This isn't about yelling or throwing plates. It's about the moment a 72-year-old man in a cardigan reminded everyone at that table what respect actually costs. If you've ever watched someone's armor crack in real time, you know the sound isn't loud. It's the kind of quiet that makes you check if you're still breathing. Stay close. This gets specific. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Derek Callahan. I teach high school history in a district that still uses overhead projectors and calls pizza a vegetable. 38 years old. Married 11 years. No kids by choice, though we talked about it enough to wear the conversation thin. I drive a sedan with a check engine light I've been ignoring since October. My life isn't cinematic. It's steady. Lesson plans on Sunday nights. Groceries on Wednesdays. A mortgage we split down the middle because my wife, Angela, makes more than I do and never lets me forget it in the small ways people don't think count. She works in pharmaceutical sales. Good at it, too. Conferences twice a month. Expense account dinners. A wardrobe that costs more than my car. I don't resent it. I just notice. We live in a split level with carpet that predates our marriage and a backyard that floods when it rains hard. It's the kind of place you improve slowly or ignore entirely. We chose ignore. Our routines fit like old jeans. She travels. I grade papers. We meet in the kitchen for reheated leftovers and true crime podcasts neither of us really follows. It worked because we didn't ask it to do more than it could. That was the deal. Low expectations, fewer disappointments. My parents live 2 hours north in the same house I grew up in. My father, Gene, retired from the post office 5 years ago. My mother, Claire, taught piano until arthritis made the keys feel like enemies. They're the type of couple that finishes each other's grocery lists and holds hands in the car for no reason. I visit once a month. Angela joins when her calendar allows, which isn't often, and nobody makes it a thing. September hit like a gear shifting without a clutch. Angela came home from a conference in Denver with new energy, the kind that makes you tilt your head. She started running before work. Not jogging. Running. 6 a.m, out the door in expensive leggings, an expression that said this time it's different. I'm not a suspicious man. I teach teenagers. I've seen every excuse, every poker face, every creative interpretation of the truth. But this felt like the start of a semester when someone switches seats for no reason they'll admit. I asked her about it one morning over toast I burned because I was watching her lace up shoes that cost more than my winter coat. She said she needed structure. Needed to feel strong again. I nodded because supporting your spouse is what you do when you don't have a better script. By October, structure had a name. Brandon. Her personal trainer. She mentioned him the way you mention weather, casually, like he'd always been there. Brandon says morning cardio burns better. Brandon thinks I should cut gluten. Brandon recommended this protein shake that tastes like chalk and optimism. I didn't ask questions. Men my age know that questions sound like accusations if you're not careful, and I wasn't ready to be careful yet. I was still thinking this was a phase. A midlife tune-up. Something that would peak and settle like a fever. I made dinner at 6 most nights. She started texting around 5:30. Running late. Don't wait up. The first few times, I waited anyway. Kept her plate warm. Watched the clock like it owed me an explanation. By the 3rd week, I stopped waiting. I ate alone, washed one plate, and let the silence in the house grow familiar. November brought a new telling. She started dressing different. Not for me. Not for work. Just different. Tighter jeans. Brighter lipstick. Hair that took longer to arrange than our mortgage papers. She'd check her phone mid-conversation and smile at something I wasn't part of. I noticed the way you notice a tire losing air slowly, a little more lean every time you check. One Thursday, she came home past 11 smelling like cologne I didn't recognize and explained she'd grabbed drinks with a client. I asked which client. She gave me a name I'd never heard and a look that said I was being needy. I wasn't being needy. I was being a man who knows what his own house smells like. I teach revolutions. I know what the temperature feels like right before something breaks. I didn't snoop. Didn't check her phone or follow her car. I just started paying attention to the math. Hours that didn't add up. Stories with gaps a teenager wouldn't risk. She said she was at the gym until 9, but the gym closed at 8. She said she had a client dinner in the city, but her car had 60 fewer miles than the round trip required. Small things. The kind of small that stacks. I'm not a detective. I'm a teacher. I deal in evidence. Pop quizzes. Citations. The difference between a guess and a thesis. So I started building a thesis. Quietly. The way you grade papers after the bell when no one's watching. December came in cold. Angela floated the idea of spending Christmas at my parents' house upstate, which surprised me because she usually campaigns hard for us to stay home or travel somewhere warm. She'd never been enthusiastic about my family. Tolerated them. Smiled through my mother's questions and my father's long stories about postal routes. But that year, she wanted to go. Insisted, even. Said it would be nice. A real family Christmas. She started shopping early, wrapping gifts with the kind of care you show when you're performing for an audience. I watched her hum along to carols she usually ignored and wondered when the season had ever made her this light. My mother called in early December to confirm we were coming. She was excited. My sister Karen and her family would be there. My uncle Walt. A few cousins. The whole loud, chaotic sprawl of people who share a last name and too many opinions. Angela took the phone from my hand and told my mother she couldn't wait. Even offered to bring a dessert. I stared at her like she'd started speaking Mandarin. The week before Christmas, she mentioned Brandon again. Said he'd be in the area visiting family. Asked if it would be weird if he stopped by for a drink since he'd be so close. I was grading essays on the French Revolution when she said it, red pen frozen mid-margin. I looked up. She was smiling, casual, like she'd just suggested we run out for milk. I asked why her trainer needed to visit during a family holiday. She said he was a friend. A good one. Someone who'd been supportive during a hard year. I didn't know we'd had a hard year, I said. She laughed. You've been busy, Derek. I've been managing. Managing what? I asked. She waved it off. Just life. Anyway, it's not a big deal. He'll stop by for an hour. You'll like him. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just returned to an essay about guillotines and wondered what it feels like when the blade is still rising. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Angela in the dark, listening to her breathe, and tried to remember the last time we'd had a conversation that wasn't logistical. The last time she'd laughed at something I said. The last time I felt like more than a name on a lease. The math wasn't adding up, and I teach teenagers. I know what it looks like when someone's rewriting the story mid-test. I got up, went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water I didn't want, and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to let Christmas happen. Let her bring Brandon if that's what she wanted. Let her play whatever game she thought she was winning. Because my father would be there. And my father has a way of seeing things that no amount of expensive leggings can cover. Gene Callahan is not a loud man. Never has been. He delivered mail for 37 years. Rain, snow, dogs that wanted his ankles, people who wanted to argue about late packages. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. He learned early that loud doesn't solve problems. Steady does. Quiet does. Paying attention does. He's the kind of man who notices when you're lying before you've finished the sentence. Not because he's cruel. Because he's seen every version of human behavior that exists on a porch step. He raised me with 2 rules. Tell the truth, and if you can't, stay quiet. I've spent my whole life trying to live by those rules. Angela was about to meet the man who wrote them. We loaded the car on December 23rd. Suitcases, gifts, a pie. Angela insisted on baking herself even though she doesn't bake. The highway stretched gray and endless under a sky threatening snow. Angela was on her phone most of the drive. Texting, smiling, the glow of the screen lighting her face in ways I used to. I drove and listened to a podcast about the Cold War, letting the narrator's voice fill the space where conversation used to live. 2 hours north, the landscape changed. Farms. Forest. The kind of quiet you can't fake. My parents' driveway was already crowded with cars. My sister's minivan. My uncle's truck. Cousins I see once a year and remember twice. The house glowed warm against the cold, every window gold, smoke curling from the chimney like a signature. My mother met us at the door, arms wide, voice bright. She hugged Angela first, longer than Angela wanted, and said something about how beautiful she looked. My father stood in the hallway, cardigan, reading glasses hanging from a cord, smiling that small smile he reserves for when he's taking inventory. He shook my hand, solid, then hugged me the way fathers hug sons when they know something's wrong but won't ask in front of company. Angela kissed his cheek, quick, polite, already looking past him toward the living room where voices layered over each other like bad wallpaper. We brought our bags upstairs to my old room. Same bed. Same posters I never took down. Same view of the backyard where I used to rake leaves and think about how far away the world felt. Angela checked her phone, smiled, typed something fast. I unpacked slow, methodical, giving myself something to do with my hands that wasn't asking questions I didn't want answered yet. Dinner that night was loud, warm, too much food on too little table space. My mother had outdone herself. Ham glazed to a shine. Mashed potatoes that could end arguments. Rolls my sister fought me for when we were kids. Angela sat across from me, laughing at my uncle's bad jokes, complimenting my mother's cooking, playing the role of daughter-in-law with the precision of someone who knows they're being watched. My father sat at the head of the table, quiet as always, cutting his ham into small bites, listening to everyone and saying little. That's his way. He listens first. Speaks last. And when he speaks, people stop chewing. After dinner, we moved to the living room. The tree stood tall in the corner, lights blinking in no particular rhythm, ornaments collected over decades, each one with a story my mother would tell if you asked. My sister's kids ran circles around the furniture, hopped up on sugar and the kind of chaos only grandparents allow. Angela sat on the couch, phone in her lap, half present, half gone. I sat beside my father in the old recliner that groans when you lean back. We watched the room like spectators at a play we'd seen before. He didn't ask me what was wrong. Didn't need to. He just looked at me over his glasses and said, "You holding up all right?" I nodded. "Long semester," I said. He nodded back. "Those laid you." We sat in that comfortable silence men use when words would just get in the way. My mother brought out cookies shaped like stars and trees. My sister poured wine. Angela checked her phone again, then stood and said she needed air. She stepped onto the porch, coat loose around her shoulders, breath fogging in the cold. Through the window, I watched her type, smile, look up at the sky like she was making a wish. My father watched too. Didn't say a word. Didn't have to. I could feel him adding it up the way he used to add up the mail routes. Every stop. Every delay. Every missing piece. Christmas Eve started with my mother's pancakes, which are less breakfast and more engineering. Fluffy, golden, stacked high enough to require architecture. Angela came down late, hair perfect, makeup applied like she was meeting someone important. She picked at her food, sipped coffee, checked her phone under the table. My mother asked if she was feeling all right. Angela smiled. Just a little tired. Long drive yesterday. My father folded his newspaper, slow, deliberate, and set it beside his plate. He looked at Angela the way a pharmacist reads a label. Careful. Thorough. He didn't ask her anything. Just looked. Then returned to his eggs. That look was a full sentence. After breakfast, Angela announced she'd invited a friend to stop by later. Her trainer, Brandon. He was in the area and she thought it would be nice for him to meet everyone. The room paused. My mother's smile flickered, confused but polite. My sister glanced at me, eyebrows doing that thing siblings do when they're asking questions without moving their lips. My father set his coffee down and leaned back in his chair, fingers laced over his stomach. A trainer, he said. That's right, Angela said, bright, confident. He's been amazing. Really helped me this year. My father nodded once. Looking forward to it, he said. His tone was even. Calm. The kind of calm that comes before weather. I spent the rest of the morning helping my father string lights along the porch railing. We worked without talking much, handing tools back and forth, adjusting bulbs, testing connections. The cold bit at my fingers but I didn't mind. It gave me something to feel that wasn't the knot in my chest. My father climbed down from the ladder, brushed his hands on his jeans, and looked at the house like he was inspecting a paint job. Looks good, he said. Then he turned to me. This trainer, he said. You know him? I shook my head. Just heard the name a lot. He nodded. People talk a lot when they're trying to convince themselves of something. I looked at him. He was watching the road, hands in his pockets, breath clouding. Your mother and I've been married 46 years, he said. You learn to hear what people aren't saying. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. He patted my shoulder once, firm, and walked back inside. Brandon arrived at 3. Tall, athletic, smile you could sell toothpaste with. He wore a sweater that fit like a suggestion and jeans that had never seen a hardware store. Angela met him at the door, hugged too long, laughed too loud, introducing him to everyone like he was a prize she'd won. This is Brandon, she said. My trainer and friend. He shook hands, confident, easy, throwing around compliments about the house, the tree, the smell of my mother's cooking. My mother, bless her, offered him cookies and cider, playing host because that's what she does. My sister's husband, Tom, gave me a look that said we'll talk later. My father stayed seated in his chair, watching, saying nothing, a presence that didn't need volume. Angela brought Brandon to meet my father last. Dad, this is Brandon. Brandon, this is Jean. They shook hands. My father's grip was firm, deliberate, the kind that measures. Brandon smiled. Great to finally meet you, sir. Angela's told me so much about this family. My father released his hand, settled back in his chair, and tilted his head slightly. Funny, he said. She's never mentioned you. The room inhaled. Brandon's smile held but his eyes shifted. Angela laughed, a shade too bright. I talk about the gym all the time, Dad. The gym, my father repeated. Not people. Angela's expression tightened. My mother, sensing something, asked if anyone wanted more cider. My father waved her off gently. I'm good, Claire. Just getting to know our guest. The afternoon unfolded with the kind of tension you feel in your shoulders. Brandon tried. I'll give him that. He complimented everything. Asked questions about family history. Helped carry dishes. Played with my sister's kids like he was auditioning for a role. Angela stayed close to him, laughing at things that weren't funny, touching his arm in ways that weren't accidental. I stood in the kitchen with my sister, washing dishes we didn't need to wash yet. Karen looked at me, dish towel in hand, and said quietly, "Derek, what the hell is going on?" "I don't know yet," I said. "But I will." She dried a plate, shaking her head. "Dad knows. You see the way he's looking at them?" I nodded. I saw. Dinner was set for 6. My mother had been cooking since dawn. Turkey, stuffing, green beans with almonds, rolls that could make you weep. The table stretched long, extra leaves added, chairs borrowed from the basement. We gathered, found our seats, my father at the head, my mother to his right. Angela sat between Brandon and me, a choice I noted but didn't comment on. My father said grace, short and simple, thanking God for family, for food, for the chance to be together. Then he looked up, surveyed the table, and said, "Let's eat." For 20 minutes, it was normal. Passing dishes. Compliments to the cook. My uncle telling the same story about a Christmas blizzard in '87. Brandon fit himself in, easy, charming, playing the part well. Angela glowed beside him, brighter than she'd been in months. I ate and said little, waiting, because I knew my father. And my father was still watching. After the meal, my mother started to clear plates. Brandon jumped up to help, stacking dishes like he'd been taught manners. My father remained seated, fingers tapping his armrest, that quiet rhythm he uses when he's thinking. Angela excused herself to the restroom. The moment she left, my father's eyes found Brandon. "So," he said, voice even, "you're a trainer." Brandon nodded, smile professional. "Yes, sir. Been doing it about 5 years now. Good work if you enjoy it." My father nodded. "I imagine you meet a lot of people." "Clients, I mean." Brandon agreed. "All kinds. It's rewarding. Helping people reach goals." My father leaned forward slightly. "You help married women a lot." The table stilled. Brandon's smile wavered. "I work with all kinds of clients," he said carefully. My father nodded again, slower. "I bet you do." Angela returned, sensing the shift in air pressure. She sat down, glancing between my father and Brandon. "Everything okay?" "Fine," my father said. "Just getting to know your friend here. He seems very dedicated." She smiled, relieved. "He is. Best trainer I've ever had." My father picked up his water glass, took a slow sip, set it down with precision. "That's good," he said. "Everybody needs someone who pushes them. Though I've always thought the best push comes from someone who loves you. Someone invested. Not someone you're paying." Angela's smile thinned. "Dad, it's not like that." My father looked at her directly, no malice, just clarity. "What's it like, Angela?" The room held its breath. My mother's hand froze on a serving spoon. My sister's eyes went wide. I sat still, watching my wife's face cycle through confusion, then defensiveness, then something close to fear. "It's friendship," she said. "Support." My father nodded. "Support's important. So's honesty. You bring this man into my home, at Christmas, introduce him to my family, and expect me to pretend I don't see what's in front of me?" Angela's voice rose slightly. "You don't know what you're talking about." My father's voice stayed level, which made it heavier. "I know you've been lying to my son. I know this man isn't just your trainer. And I know you thought you could parade him in here and we'd all smile and play along." Brandon stood, hands up, trying to de-escalate. "Sir, I think there's a misunderstanding." My father didn't look at him. "Sit down," he said quietly. Brandon sat. My father kept his eyes on Angela. "You want to leave your marriage, that's between you and Derek. But you don't disrespect my home. You don't disrespect my family. And you sure as hell don't disrespect my son by bringing your affair to my table and calling it friendship." Angela's face crumbled. Tears started, real ones, the kind you can't fake. Her hands shook. She looked at me, then at my father, then at the table. "I didn't mean," she started. "Yes, you did," my father said. "You meant every part of it. You just didn't think anyone would call it what it is." She stood, chair scraping, tears streaming now, and looked around the table like she was searching for allies. No one moved. My mother's face was stone. My sister looked away. Brandon stared at his plate. Angela grabbed her coat, fumbling with the zipper, and walked out the front door into the cold. The door closed behind her. The silence that followed was thick, earned, the kind that happens when truth sits down uninvited and refuses to leave. My father picked up his fork, cut a piece of turkey, and took a bite. Then he looked at me. "You all right, son?" I nodded, throat tight. "I'm good, Dad." He nodded back. "Good. Let's finish this meal your mother worked so hard on." Brandon left 10 minutes later, mumbling apologies no one accepted. I walked him to his car, not out of kindness, but because I wanted to see him gone. He opened his door, paused, looked back at me. "For what it's worth," he said, "I didn't know it would go like this." I stared at him. "You knew exactly what this was." He got in his car and drove off, taillights fading into the dark. I stood in the driveway, cold seeping through my jacket, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Not happiness. Not victory. Just relief that the pretending was over. Inside, my family had moved to the living room. My mother brought out pie. My sister's kids played with new toys under the tree. My father sat in his chair, reading glasses on, newspaper in lap, looking exactly like a man who'd just done what needed doing and had no regrets. I sat beside him. "Thank you," I said quietly. He looked at me over his glasses. "For what?" "For seeing it," I said. "Angela's told me so much about this family." My father released his hand, settled back in his chair, and tilted his head slightly. "Funny," he said. "She's never mentioned you." The room inhaled. Brandon's smile held but his eyes shifted. Angela laughed, a shade too bright. "I talk about the gym all the time, Dad." "The gym," my father repeated. "Not people." Angela's expression tightened. My mother, sensing something, asked if anyone wanted more cider. My father waved her off gently. "I'm good, Claire. Just getting to know our guest." The afternoon unfolded with the kind of tension you feel in your shoulders. Brandon tried. I'll give him that. He complimented everything. Asked questions about family history. Helped carry dishes. Played with my sister's kids like he was auditioning for a role. Angela stayed close to him, laughing at things that weren't funny, touching his arm in ways that weren't accidental. I stood in the kitchen with my sister, washing dishes we didn't need to wash yet. Karen looked at me, dish towel in hand, and said quietly, "Derek, what the hell is going on?" "I don't know yet," I said. "But I will." She dried a plate, shaking her head. "Dad knows." "You see the way he's looking at them?" I nodded. I saw. Dinner was set for 6. My mother had been cooking since dawn. Turkey, stuffing, green beans with almonds, rolls that could make you weep. The table stretched long, extra leaves added, chairs borrowed from the basement. We gathered, found our seats, my father at the head, my mother to his right. Angela sat between Brandon and me, a choice I noted but didn't comment on. My father said grace, short and simple, thanking God for family, for food, for the chance to be together. Then he looked up, surveyed the table, and said, "Let's eat." For 20 minutes, it was normal. Passing dishes. Compliments to the cook. My uncle telling the same story about a Christmas blizzard in '87. Brandon fit himself in, easy, charming, playing the part well. Angela glowed beside him, brighter than she'd been in months. I ate and said little, waiting, because I knew my father. And my father was still watching. After the meal, my mother started to clear plates. Brandon jumped up to help, stacking dishes like he'd been taught manners. My father remained seated, fingers tapping his armrest, that quiet rhythm he uses when he's thinking. Angela excused herself to the restroom. The moment she left, my father's eyes found Brandon. "So," he said, voice even, "you're a trainer." Brandon nodded, smile professional. "Yes, sir. Been doing it about 5 years now. Good work if you enjoy it." My father nodded. "I imagine you meet a lot of people. Clients, I mean." Brandon agreed. "All kinds. It's rewarding. Helping people reach goals." My father leaned forward slightly. "You help married women a lot." The table stilled. Brandon's smile wavered. "I work with all kinds of clients," he said carefully. My father nodded again, slower. "I bet you do." Angela returned, sensing the shift in air pressure. She sat down, glancing between my father and Brandon. "Everything okay?" "Fine," my father said. "Just getting to know your friend here. He seems very dedicated." She smiled, relieved. "He is. Best trainer I've ever had." My father picked up his water glass, took a slow sip, set it down with precision. "That's good," he said. "Everybody needs someone who pushes them. Though I've always thought the best push comes from someone who loves you. Someone invested. Not someone you're paying." Angela's smile thinned. "Dad, it's not like that." My father looked at her directly, no malice, just clarity. "What's it like, Angela?" The room held its breath. My mother's hand froze on a serving spoon. My sister's eyes went wide. I sat still, watching my wife's face cycle through confusion, then defensiveness, then something close to fear. "It's friendship," she said. "Support." My father nodded. "Support's important. So's honesty. You bring this man into my home, at Christmas, introduce him to my family, and expect me to pretend I don't see what's in front of me?" Angela's voice rose slightly. "You don't know what you're talking about." My father's voice stayed level, which made it heavier. "I know you've been lying to my son. I know this man isn't just your trainer. And I know you thought you could parade him in here and we'd all smile and play along." Brandon stood, hands up, trying to de-escalate. "Sir, I think there's a misunderstanding." My father didn't look at him. "Sit down," he said quietly. Brandon sat. My father kept his eyes on Angela. "You want to leave your marriage, that's between you and Derek. But you don't disrespect my home. You don't disrespect my family. And you sure as hell don't disrespect my son by bringing your affair to my table and calling it friendship." Angela's face crumbled. Tears started, real ones, the kind you can't fake. Her hands shook. She looked at me, then at my father, then at the table. "I didn't mean," she started. "Yes you did," my father said. "You meant every part of it. You just didn't think anyone would call it what it is." She stood, chair scraping, tears streaming now, and looked around the table like she was searching for allies. No one moved. My mother's face was stone. My sister looked away. Brandon stared at his plate. Angela grabbed her coat, fumbling with the zipper, and walked out the front door into the cold. The door closed behind her. The silence that followed was thick, earned, the kind that happens when truth sits down uninvited and refuses to leave. My father picked up his fork, cut a piece of turkey, and took a bite. Then he looked at me. "You all right, son?" I nodded, throat tight. "I'm good, Dad." He nodded back. "Good. Let's finish this meal your mother worked so hard on." Brandon left 10 minutes later, mumbling apologies no one accepted. I walked into his car, not out of kindness, but because I wanted to see him gone. He opened his door, paused, looked back at me. "For what it's worth," he said, "I didn't know it would go like this." I stared at him. "You knew exactly what this was." He got in his car and drove off, taillights fading into the dark. I stood in the driveway, cold seeping through my jacket, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Not happiness. Not victory. Just relief that the pretending was over. Inside, my family had moved to the living room. My mother brought out pie. My sister's kids played with new toys under the tree. My father sat in his chair, reading, glasses on, newspaper in lap, looking exactly like a man who'd just done what needed doing and had no regrets. I sat beside him. "Thank you," I said quietly. He looked at me over his glasses. "For what?" "For seeing it," I said. "For saying it." He folded his paper. "Son, when someone tries to make a fool of you in front of the people you love, somebody's got to speak up. I've been your father a long time. That doesn't stop just because you're grown." Angela came back an hour later. She didn't come inside. She texted me from the driveway. I waited until morning to respond. When I did, I told her we'd talk when we got home, but the talking had a conclusion and we both knew it. Christmas morning was quiet, smaller, more honest. We opened gifts. Drank coffee. My mother made cinnamon rolls. My father read the news. No one mentioned Angela. No one needed to. Around noon, I packed my things, hugged my family longer than usual, and thanked my father again. He walked me to the car, hands in his pockets, breath visible in the December air. "You're gonna be all right," he said. "I know," I said. "Because of you." He shook his head. "Because of you. I just reminded you what you already knew." I drove home alone. The highway felt longer, quieter, like the road was giving me space to think. Angela's car was in the driveway when I arrived. I didn't go inside right away. I sat in my car, engine off, and thought about my father's voice. Calm. Clear. Unwavering. The kind of voice that doesn't shout because it doesn't need to. The kind that cuts through noise and lands exactly where it's aimed. I thought about what it means to love someone enough to tell them the truth even when it costs you comfort. Even when it ruins a holiday. Even when the easier thing is to smile and stay quiet. Inside, Angela was packing. Not everything. Just enough. We didn't fight. Didn't yell. We stood in the living room we'd shared for 11 years and acknowledged what we'd both known for months. "It's over," she said. "Yeah," I said. "It is." She asked if I hated her. I told her no. I just didn't recognize her anymore. She nodded, wiped her eyes, and kept folding clothes into a suitcase that looked newer than anything we'd bought together. She left on a Tuesday. Took half the furniture, none of the pictures, and a silence that felt louder than any argument. I didn't chase her. Didn't beg. I let her go the way you let go of a book you finished. It told its story. You closed the cover. The weeks after were strange. Quiet in a way that wasn't lonely, just different. I went back to teaching. Graded essays. Planned lessons. My students asked where my wedding ring went. I told them it was being cleaned, which was true in a way that wasn't about jewelry. I called my father once a week. We talked about nothing important. Weather. Sports. His garden plans for spring. He never asked how I was doing. He didn't need to. He knew. My mother sent care packages. Cookies. Soup. A blanket she'd knitted that smelled like her house. My sister checked in with texts that said thinking of you and not much else, which was perfect. By February, Angela had moved in with Brandon. I know because mutual friends felt the need to update me, like I was keeping score. I wasn't. I was rebuilding a life that didn't need her permission to feel whole. I painted the living room. Fixed the leaky faucet I'd been ignoring. Bought a new couch that was just mine and sat in it without wondering if someone else approved. I started running in the mornings, not because a trainer told me to, but because the cold air felt good and my thoughts were clearer when my legs were tired. I didn't date. Didn't look. I just existed in my own space and found that it fit better than I'd expected. Spring came. I survived my first holiday season divorced. Easter. My birthday. Days that used to mean something different. My father called on my birthday. Sang off-key like he always does. Asked what I was doing to celebrate. "I'm fine, Dad," I said. "I know you are," he said. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" I asked. "For standing up when it mattered. Even if it was me doing the talking, you stood there and let the truth land. That takes strength." I didn't feel strong. I felt tired. But I told him thank you anyway because sometimes you accept compliments you don't believe yet, and eventually, you grow into them. Summer brought clarity. I filed papers. She signed without contest. We split everything down the middle like adults who'd forgotten how to be married but remembered how to be fair. The house became mine. She took the car she'd always preferred. No lawyers needed to referee. We were strangers with shared debt and nothing left to argue over. The divorce finalized in July. I didn't celebrate. Didn't mourn. I just updated my paperwork and moved forward the way you do when a chapter closes and the next one hasn't started yet. I saw my father in August. Drove up for his birthday. 73 years old and still splitting firewood like he's got something to prove. We sat on the porch that evening, watching the sun set over the same backyard where I used to think I'd bring my own kids someday. He handed me a beer. We drank in silence. Then he said, "You know what I'm proudest of?" "What?" I asked. "That you didn't make excuses for her. Didn't pretend it was something it wasn't. You let the truth be ugly. That's rare." I looked at him. "You made it easier." He shook his head. "I just said what you already knew. You're the one who had to live with it." In September, exactly 1 year after Angela started running, I started teaching again. New semester. New students. Same old classroom with the broken blinds and the desk that wobbles. A student asked on the first day if I believed in second chances. I thought about it. Told them I believed in learning from the first mistake enough that you don't need a second one. They laughed. I didn't. I meant it. That year taught me that betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it walks in wearing expensive leggings and a smile that's learned to lie. Sometimes it gets introduced to your family and expects applause. And sometimes, the person who saves you isn't you. It's a 72-year-old man in a cardigan who's seen enough of life to know when someone's performing and when someone's present. I don't talk to Angela anymore. Don't need to. She's living whatever life she built with Brandon. I hope it's worth what it cost. I'm not bitter. I'm just done. There's a difference. I'm building something quieter now. Something that doesn't need validation or an audience. I cook for myself. I travel when I want. I sit in my father's kitchen and listen to him tell stories I've heard 100 times because repetition is how love sounds when you're paying attention. I don't know if I'll marry again. Don't know if I want to. What I know is this. Dignity isn't about being right. It's about being honest when honesty is inconvenient. It's about letting the truth sit at the table even when it ruins the meal. It's about having a father who taught you that silence is sometimes the loudest thing you can say. If you've ever had someone speak up for you when you couldn't speak for yourself, you know what I mean. If you've ever watched someone cry because they finally got called out, you know that tears don't mean remorse. They mean the mask slipped. And if you've ever driven home alone from a holiday that ended in truth instead of tradition, you know that relief and grief can sit in the same car without fighting. My father didn't yell. Didn't need to. He just reminded everyone at that table what respect looks like when it's required. And my wife cried because she'd forgotten. Or maybe she never knew. Either way, it wasn't my job to teach her. It was my job to walk away. And I did. Christmas this year will be different. Smaller, maybe. Quieter, definitely. But honest. And I'll sit across from my father and thank him again for seeing what I was too close to name. For saying what I was too tired to fight for. For being the kind of man who knows that sometimes love looks like a hard truth delivered calmly over Christmas dinner. If there's a lesson in all this, it's simple. Don't let people rewrite your story while you're still holding the pen. Don't let someone else's comfort cost you your dignity. And if someone loves you, really loves you, they won't ask you to pretend the emperor is wearing clothes when he's standing there naked. My father taught me that. And last Christmas, he reminded my wife. She just didn't like the lesson. The thing about teaching history is you learn to recognize patterns. Empires don't collapse in a day. They erode. Small cracks that nobody thinks to repair until the whole structure is leaning and it's too late to prop it up with good intentions. That's what my marriage was. A series of small cracks I'd been stepping over, telling myself they were just part of the terrain. By the time Angela walked out that Tuesday with her suitcase and her new life packed inside it, the foundation had been dust for months. I just hadn't wanted to sweep it up and see how little was left. The first week alone was strange in the way that silence is strange when you've grown used to noise. Not the good kind of noise. The kind that hums in the background and keeps you from hearing your own thoughts. Angela's absence was loud. The bathroom counter stayed clear. No makeup scattered like evidence. No hair products forming a small village near the sink. The closet had gaps where her clothes used to hang, empty space that looked like missing teeth. I didn't rush to fill it. I let it sit there, a reminder that something had occupied that space and now it didn't. That's all. No drama. Just facts. I went to work. Taught the American Revolution to kids who couldn't care less about taxation without representation because they were busy worrying about who liked whose Instagram post. I graded essays with the same red pen I'd been using since September, marking mistakes that would probably repeat themselves next semester because that's how learning works. Slow. Repetitive. You teach the same lesson 15 different ways and hope one of them sticks. I felt like I'd been teaching myself the same lesson for 11 years and had finally, reluctantly, let it stick. Angela wasn't coming back. And I didn't want her to. My colleague, Martin, noticed first. He's been teaching English across the hall for 20 years and has the kind of face that looks like it's permanently grading a disappointing essay. He caught me in the faculty lounge microwaving leftovers that were more microwave than left. "You look different," he said, pouring coffee that had been sitting since dawn. I shrugged. "Got a haircut." He shook his head. "Not that. You look lighter. Like you put something down." I thought about that while my lunch spun in mechanical circles. "Maybe I did," I said. He nodded, sipped his terrible coffee, and didn't ask more. That's the thing about people who've been around long enough. They know when to let a sentence end. Nights were harder. Not because I missed Angela. I missed the idea of not being alone. There's a difference. When you've shared a space with someone for over a decade, your routines wrap around theirs like vines. You don't realize how much you've adjusted until you're standing in the kitchen at 7 making dinner for one and there's nobody to complain that you used too much garlic or not enough salt. I cooked simple. Chicken. Rice. Vegetables that steamed in a bag because I wasn't trying to impress anyone, including myself. I ate at the table instead of in front of the TV. No distractions. Just me, a plate, and the sound of my own chewing. It felt monastic. Disciplined. Like I was learning to be a person again instead of half of a failing equation. I started walking after dinner. Nothing ambitious. Just around the neighborhood. Same loop every night. Past the houses with lights on and families inside doing whatever families do when they're not falling apart. I didn't envy them. Didn't resent them. I just walked and let my legs do the thinking because my brain was tired of running in circles. One night, a neighbor I barely knew waved from his driveway. "Cold one tonight," he said. I agreed. We stood there for a second, two men with nothing to say and no reason to say it, and then I kept walking. It was perfect. No performance required. My mother called every Sunday like clockwork. She didn't ask about Angela directly. She asked how I was sleeping. If I was eating. If the house was holding up. Her way of checking without checking. I told her I was fine, which was true in the way that fine means you're surviving and not much else. She'd pause, and I could hear her deciding whether to push or let it go. She always let it go. But then she'd say something like, "Your father wants to know if you need help with anything. Gutters. Furnace. Anything." I knew what she meant. They were offering me reasons to come home. Reasons to not be alone. I appreciated it. Told her I'd visit soon. I did visit in late January. Drove up on a Saturday when the sky was the color of old dishwater and the roads were clean but threatening. My father was in the garage when I arrived, organizing his tool bench for the third time that winter. He does that when he's thinking. Moves the same wrenches around like he's solving a puzzle only he can see. I stood in the doorway, hands in my pockets, and watched him work. He didn't look up right away. Just kept sorting. Then he said, "You eat yet?" I shook my head. "Good," he said. "Your mother made pot roast." We ate in the kitchen, just the three of us. My sister was busy with her kids. My uncle was nursing a cold. It was quiet in the way family dinners are quiet when the people at the table know each other well enough not to fill every silence. My mother asked about school. I told her about a student who'd written an essay comparing the Boston Tea Party to a TikTok trend. She laughed. My father smiled into his potatoes. After dinner, my father and I ended up on the porch. It was too cold to stay out long, but we did anyway, because that's what men do when they need to talk without talking. He handed me a beer from the fridge he keeps in the garage for exactly this purpose. We drank and watched the nothing that happens in small towns on Saturday nights. A car passing. A dog barking 3 streets over. The kind of quiet that feels like it's been there since before you were born and will be there long after. "Your mother's worried about you," he said eventually. I told him she didn't need to be. He nodded. "I know. But she will anyway. That's her job." I asked him if he ever regretted what he said at Christmas. If he thought he'd gone too far. He took a long pull from his beer, set it on the railing, and looked at me like I'd just asked if water was wet. Regret telling the truth? No. Regret that it had to be said? Yeah. Every day. He turned back to the dark. Nobody wants to be the one to say it, Derek. But somebody has to. Otherwise, you all just sit there pretending the house isn't on fire. I thought about that. About how many months I'd spent pretending. How many dinners I'd eaten across from a woman I didn't recognize, telling myself it was a phase. That it would pass. That if I just waited long enough, we'd find our way back. My father's voice cut through the thought. "You can't wait out a lie, son. It just grows." We finished our beers in silence. Before I left, he walked me to my car. Handed me a bag my mother had packed. Leftovers, a loaf of bread, cookies I wouldn't eat but would keep on my counter because they were from her. He put his hand on my shoulder, heavy, warm. "You did the right thing," he said. "Letting her go. I know it doesn't feel like it yet. But you did." I nodded, throat tight. "Thanks, Dad." He squeezed once and stepped back. "Drive safe. Tell me when you get home." I texted him from my driveway 2 hours later. "Home." He replied with a thumbs up. That was it. That was enough. February came in cold and stayed that way. Divorce papers arrived in a manila envelope that felt heavier than it should have. I signed them at the kitchen table with a pen that kept skipping, which felt appropriate. Nothing about this process had been smooth. Why should the signature be any different? I mailed them back the same day. Didn't keep copies. Didn't need to. It wasn't a document I planned to frame. Angela signed hers a week later. The lawyer called to confirm. Said we'd be officially dissolved in 60 days. Dissolved. Like we were a corporation that hadn't turned a profit. I thanked him and hung up. Sat in my car in the school parking lot and felt nothing. Not relief. Not sadness. Just nothing. Which, I was learning, was its own kind of progress. At school, routine saved me. Bell schedules. Lesson plans. The predictable chaos of teenagers who thought their problems were unique. I taught the Civil War to kids who couldn't locate Virginia on a map. I taught Reconstruction to kids who thought it was a home improvement show. I taught and I graded and I showed up every day because showing up was the only thing I knew how to do well. Martin caught me in the hallway between periods. You doing anything Friday? I shrugged. Grading essays. Exciting stuff. He rolled his eyes. Come to trivia. Me and some folks from the district. You need to leave your house. I started to decline. He held up a hand. I'm not asking. I'm telling. Friday. 7. Mulligans. Be there. I went. Mostly because saying no felt like more effort than saying yes. Mulligans was loud in the way bars are loud when nobody's trying to be heard, just trying to be part of the noise. Martin waved me over to a table in the back. 3 other teachers I vaguely recognized. A librarian. A guidance counselor. People I'd seen at faculty meetings but never talked to beyond polite nods. They made space. Bought me a beer I didn't ask for. Pulled me into a trivia game I was terrible at. I didn't know the answer to a single sports question. Got every history question right. We came in 3rd. Nobody cared. We stayed until the bar started putting chairs on tables, talking about nothing important. Bad students. Worse administration. The kind of shop talk that bonds people who share a trench. When I got home that night, the house didn't feel as empty. It felt lived in. Like I'd been somewhere and come back, which sounds small but wasn't. I'd spent weeks treating my house like a waiting room. A place to sit until the next thing happened. That night, I realized the next thing was already happening. I was living. Not recovering. Not rebuilding. Just living. I made a sandwich I didn't need and ate it standing at the counter, and it tasted better than anything Angela had ever cooked, which was never much to begin with. March brought the kind of weather that can't decide what it wants to be. Cold mornings. Warm afternoons. Rain that couldn't commit. I started running again. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. 5 in the morning, before the sun had any opinions. I'd lace up shoes that were older than my marriage and hit the same route Angela used to take. The one she'd wake up early for, the one that led to Brandon and protein shakes and a life that didn't include me. I ran it and reclaimed it. Made it mine. Every step felt like erasing something. Not her. Just the version of me that had waited around hoping she'd come home. I ran past the gym she used to go to. It looked smaller in daylight. Less significant. Just a building with glass doors and motivational posters nobody reads. I wondered if Brandon still worked there. If Angela still went. I didn't wonder long. It wasn't my business anymore. That was the gift of divorce. A clean line between what's yours and what isn't. I kept running. By the end of the month, I could do 5 miles without stopping. My knees hated me but my head felt clearer than it had in years. Pain is just your body's way of telling you you're still here. I was still here. School ended for spring break. I didn't have plans. Didn't need them. I spent the first 2 days fixing things in the house I'd been ignoring. Leaky faucet. Loose cabinet hinge. The bathroom tile that had been cracked since we moved in and Angela always said we'd get to eventually. Eventually never came when she was here. But I was here. And I had a weekend and a YouTube tutorial and enough stubbornness to figure it out. I fixed the tile. Grouted it. Sealed it. Stood back and looked at it like I'd built a cathedral. It was one tile. But it was mine. And it wasn't broken anymore. My sister called midweek. "Just checking in," she said, which was code for "Mom told me to call you." I appreciated it anyway. We talked about her kids. About her husband's new job. About the weather, because that's what siblings do when they're trying to care without prying. Then she said, "You sound better." I asked her what I'd sounded like before. "Tired," she said. "Like you were holding your breath." I thought about that after we hung up. She was right. I had been holding my breath. Waiting for Angela to come back. Waiting for an apology. Waiting for some closing scene that made sense of the mess. But life doesn't work like that. There's no music swell. No final speech. People just leave. And you just keep going. April was faculty meetings and standardized testing and the kind of bureaucratic nonsense that makes you question your career choices. But in between, there were good days. A student who finally understood the Emancipation Proclamation. A colleague who brought donuts because it was Friday and Fridays deserved donuts. Small things that used to get buried under the weight of a bad marriage and now had space to matter. I started noticing them. Writing them down. Not in a gratitude journal or anything performative. Just in my head. Mental bookmarks for days that didn't hurt. I went to trivia again. And again. It became a routine. Fridays at Mulligan's with Martin and whoever else showed up. We had a team name. The Detention League. We never won, but we always laughed. One night, a woman from the table next to ours asked if she could join our team. Hers had bailed. We said yes because we weren't precious about it. Her name was Nicole. She taught 3rd grade at a school across town. She knew every Disney movie question. Got every geography question wrong. She fit. By the end of the night, she was part of the group. It was easy. No pressure. Just people being people. Nicole started coming every week. We'd talk between rounds. She'd recently gone through a breakup. Not a divorce. But painful in the way endings are painful when you thought you were building something and it turns out you were just waiting for it to collapse. We compared notes. Laughed at how similar the patterns were. The excuses. The late nights. The way people rewrite history to make themselves the hero. She got it. I got it. There was no romance. Just recognition. Two people who'd survived something and were still figuring out what came next. May was the final stretch of the school year. Students checked out mentally while teachers checked out emotionally. We were all just counting days until summer. I was counting too, but not with dread. For the first time in years, I was looking forward to time off. Not because I had plans. Because I didn't. And that felt like freedom. No obligations. No schedules that weren't mine. Just weeks of open space I could fill however I wanted. I thought about taking a trip. Somewhere I'd never been. Somewhere Angela had never wanted to go. I Googled national parks. Made a list. Didn't book anything. Just like knowing I could. The last day of school was chaos. Students signing yearbooks. Teachers cleaning out classrooms. Promises to stay in touch that everyone knew wouldn't last past June. I packed up my desk. Took down the maps and timelines I'd hung in September. Threw away papers I'd meant to file and never did. Martin stopped by my room. "Survived another year," he said. "Barely," I said. He laughed. "You doing anything this summer?" I shrugged. "Thinking about it." He nodded. "Good. You should. You've earned it." I didn't know what I'd earned, but I appreciated him saying it. I drove home that afternoon with the windows down and the radio up. The air smelled like cut grass and possibility. I didn't have Angela in the passenger seat complaining about the volume or the station or the route I'd taken. I had space. And quiet. And the kind of tired that comes from finishing something instead of quitting. I pulled into my driveway, turned off the car and sat for a minute. Just sat. Looking at the house that was fully mine now. The lawn I'd mowed that morning. The mailbox I'd repainted in March. Small things. But they added up to something that felt like home. Inside, I changed clothes. Made a sandwich. Cracked a beer I'd been saving for no particular reason. This felt like reason enough. I sat on the back porch and watched the sun set over the fence I'd been meaning to stain. Maybe I'd do that this summer. Or maybe I wouldn't. Either way, it was my choice. Nobody to ask permission from. Nobody to negotiate with. Just me and a list of projects that would get done or wouldn't, and either way, the world would keep turning. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. First day of summer. You celebrating? I smiled. Just sitting, I replied. Good, he wrote back. Sometimes that's enough. He was right. Sometimes it was. I finished my beer. Watched the sky turn colors that don't have names. Felt the day settle into evening without resistance. Somewhere across town, Angela was living whatever life she'd built. I hoped it was good. Not for her sake. For mine. Because her happiness or lack of it didn't affect me anymore. That was the real freedom. Not that she was gone. But that her absence didn't hurt. Summer started slow and stayed that way. I slept in. Read books I'd been meaning to read for years. Fix things around the house at my own pace. The fence got stained in June. The garage got organized in July. I planted tomatoes that actually grew, which felt like a minor miracle. I wasn't a gardener. But I watered them and they responded by existing, which seemed like a fair trade. I picked the first ripe one in early August and ate it standing in the backyard, warm from the sun, tasting like effort and patience. It was the best tomato I'd ever had. Not because it was special. Because I'd grown it. I took a trip in late July. Drove west with no particular destination. Stopped when I was tired. Kept going when I wasn't. I saw mountains and deserts and small towns that looked like they'd been abandoned by progress and didn't mind. I stayed in motels that smelled like old carpet and optimism. I ate at diners where the coffee was strong and the pie was adequate. I talked to no one unless they talked first. It was perfect. I came home a week later, sunburned and sore and more myself than I'd felt in years. Nicole texted while I was on the road. Trivia crew misses you. I replied that I'd be back soon. When I returned, we picked up right where we'd left off. Same table. Same terrible team name. Same easy rhythm. One night after trivia, she asked if I wanted to grab food. Not a date. Just food. We went to a diner that served breakfast all day and sat in a booth that squeaked. We talked about summer. About school starting again. About her nephew who was obsessed with dinosaurs and my father who was obsessed with his garden. It was easy. Comfortable. The kind of conversation that doesn't need a destination. When I dropped her off at her car, she said thanks for this. I needed normal. I told her I got it. We both sat there for a second, two people who understood that normal is underrated until it's gone. She waved and drove off. I sat in the parking lot for a minute, engine idling, and realized I'd just had the most normal night I'd had in over a year. No drama. No subtext. Just two people talking. It felt revolutionary. August meant preparing for the school year. New students. New lesson plans. The same old battles with the copy machine that never worked and the AC that only worked when it felt like it. I didn't mind. Routine had become a friend instead of a cage. I knew what to expect. And when I didn't, I'd learned to adjust without catastrophizing. That was new. The old me would have spiraled. The current me just dealt with it and moved on. Growth looks boring from the outside. But it's everything when you're the one doing it. Martin asked if I was ready for another year. I told him I was. He looked surprised. Really? Yeah, I said. Really? He nodded slowly. You're different, man. Good different. I shrugged. Just lighter, I guess. He laughed. That's what I said last year. I told you. He had. And he'd been right. I had put something down. I just hadn't realized how heavy it was until my shoulders stopped aching. School started the Tuesday after Labor Day. Fresh faces. Nervous energy. The smell of new notebooks and old regrets. I stood in front of my first period class and introduced myself the way I always do. I'm Mr. Callahan. I teach history. Not because it's exciting. Because it matters. A kid in the back raised his hand. Is this class hard? I smiled. Only if you don't pay attention. They laughed. I'd won them over. First 5 minutes of the year. It was going to be a good one. At lunch, I sat with Martin and the usual crew. We compared schedules. Complained about class sizes. Made predictions about which students would be problems and which would surprise us. It was the same conversation we had every year. But it felt different. I felt present. Not distracted by what was waiting at home or what wasn't. Just here. In the moment. Eating a sandwich and being part of something that didn't require me to be anything other than what I was. Nicole joined our lunch table that week. She transferred to our school over the summer. Budget cuts at her old district. She slid into a seat across from me and said, "Guess we're co-workers now." I said, "Guess so." Martin raised an eyebrow. I ignored him. There was nothing to raise an eyebrow about. We were friends. Colleagues. People who'd survived bad relationships and found each other on the other side. That was it. That was enough. September settled into routine. Lessons. Grading. Faculty meetings that could have been emails. Life. Normal, unremarkable life. And it was perfect. I wasn't waiting for anything. Wasn't hoping for some dramatic turn. I was just existing in my own space, doing my own thing, and finding that it was more than sufficient. My house was clean. My bills were paid. My students were learning. My father called every Sunday. My mother sent care packages. My sister texted memes. I had friends. I had routines. I had a life that didn't need someone else to validate it. One Friday night at trivia, Nicole asked if I ever thought about dating again. I told her I didn't know. Maybe eventually. But not yet. She nodded. Same, she said. It's weird, right? Starting over. I agreed. It was weird. But also kind of freeing. You get to decide what you want this time. No compromises. No settling. Just what actually makes you happy. She smiled. When did you get so wise? I laughed. I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being stupid. October brought cooler weather and the kind of comfort that comes from knowing where you are and being okay with it. I raked leaves on a Saturday morning and didn't resent it. I carved a pumpkin for my porch because I felt like it. I bought Halloween candy I knew I'd end up eating myself. Small joys. The kind you miss when you're too busy being miserable. I wasn't miserable anymore. I was just me. And me was enough. My father called on a Sunday in late October. Your mother wants to know if you're coming for Thanksgiving. I hadn't thought about it. Holidays still felt loaded. But I told him yes. I'd be there. Good, he said. We missed you last year. I knew what he meant. Last year I'd been in the wreckage. This year I was out of it. There was a difference. I'll be there, I said. He didn't say anything for a second. Then, proud of you, son. Thanks, Dad. I meant it. November came fast. The school year hit its stride. Students stopped testing boundaries and started learning. I taught the lead up to World War I. The alliances. The tensions. The small sparks that ignited everything. A student asked how people didn't see it coming. I told her they did. They just didn't think it would happen to them. That's how most disasters work. You see the signs. You just don't believe them until it's too late. She nodded. That's depressing, Mr. Callahan. I shrugged. That's history. Thanksgiving week, I drove north. Same highway. Same exit. Same driveway. But everything felt different. I wasn't dreading it. Wasn't bracing for awkwardness or tension. I was just going home. My mother met me at the door, apron on, flower in her hair. She hugged me longer than necessary. You look good, she said. I feel good, I told her. She smiled like I'd just told her I'd won the lottery. My father was in the living room, newspaper in hand, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up. Nodded. Good drive? Fine, I said. He nodded again. Good. Dinner that night was loud and warm. My sister's family. My uncle. A few cousins. The chaos of people who love each other and aren't afraid to argue about stuffing recipes. I sat between my father and my nephew, who wanted to tell me everything he'd learned about dinosaurs in the last 6 months. I listened. Asked questions. Let him be excited. It felt good. Being present. Being part of something that didn't hurt. After dinner, my father and I ended up on the porch. Same spot. Same cold. Same beers. He didn't ask how I was. Didn't need to. We just sat. Eventually he said, "You're doing good, Derek." "I am," I said. He nodded. "I knew you would. You're stubborn. Like your old man." I laughed. "That a compliment?" He smiled. "Take it however you want." We finished our beers. Went inside. Helped my mother with dishes. Watched a game nobody cared about. It was perfect. Driving home the next day, I thought about last Christmas. About Angela. About Brandon. About my father's voice cutting through the noise. I didn't feel anger. Didn't feel regret. I just felt distance. Like it had happened to someone else. In a way, it had. The man who sat at that table wasn't the man driving this car. That man had been waiting for permission to live his life. This man had stopped waiting. This man was already living. December rolled around again. A full year since everything imploded at my parents' dining table. I wasn't dreading it the way I thought I might. The calendar flipping to the month that used to mean Angela and obligation and pretending everything was fine now just meant winter break and time with people who actually mattered. I'd learned something over the past 12 months. You don't heal in straight lines. You heal in moments. Small ones. A morning where you don't think about what went wrong. An evening where being alone feels like a choice instead of a sentence. A holiday that doesn't carry the weight of last year's disaster. My mother called 2 weeks before Christmas. Same question as always. You coming home? This time I didn't hesitate. Yeah, Mom. I'll be there. I could hear her smile through the phone. Your father will be glad. We're keeping it smaller this year. Just us and Karen's family. I told her that sounded perfect. And it did. No performance. No strangers pretending to be friends. Just family. The kind that speaks up when something's wrong and holds you steady when you're trying to find your footing again. School let out on a Friday. I'd survived another semester. Final exams graded. Grades submitted. The relief that comes with knowing you've got 2 weeks where nobody needs anything from you. Martin caught me in the parking lot. You look happy, he said. I thought about it. I am, I told him. He clapped my shoulder. Good. You earned it. Nicole waved from her car. See you after break. I waved back. The simplicity of it all felt like wealth I hadn't known I was accumulating. I drove north on the 23rd. Roads clear. Sky gray but not threatening. The same route I'd driven 100 times. But this time I wasn't running from anything or toward anything. I was just going. The difference mattered. I pulled into my parents' driveway just after lunch. My father was stringing lights along the porch railing. Same lights as last year. Same careful precision. He climbed down when he saw me. Grabbed my bag before I could. You're early, he said. Wanted to beat the weather, I told him. He nodded. Smart. Inside smelled like cinnamon and pine. My mother had the kitchen in full production. Pies cooling on racks. Something in the oven that made my stomach remember it had been hours since breakfast. She wiped her hands on her apron and hugged me tight. My boy, she said. I'm so glad you're here. Me too, Mom. And I meant it. My sister arrived that evening with her husband and kids. The noise level tripled. Laughter. Arguments over board games. My nephew showing me a new dinosaur book he'd gotten. Normal chaos. The kind that makes a house feel alive instead of staged. That night after the kids went to bed, the adults sat in the living room. My sister poured wine. My father nursed a beer. My mother brought out cookies nobody needed but everyone wanted. We talked about nothing important. Work. Weather. My brother-in-law's fantasy football league that was going poorly. At some point, Karen looked at me. You seem good, Derek. Really good. I shrugged. I'm getting there. She smiled. No. You're there. You just don't realize it yet. My father caught my eye. Raised his beer slightly. I raised mine back. A silent acknowledgement between men who don't need words to say what matters. Christmas Eve was everything last year wasn't. Calm. Easy. Nobody walking on eggshells. Nobody performing for an audience. Just people who loved each other existing in the same space without agenda. We played cards. Watched a movie the kids picked. Ate too much of my mother's cooking. My father and I stepped outside for air around 10. Same porch. Same cold. Same ritual. You doing all right? He asked. Yeah, Dad. I really am. He nodded. Could tell. You carry yourself different now. I asked him what he meant. He thought for a second. Like you're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like you know you'll be fine either way. Christmas morning was loud and bright. Wrapping paper everywhere. My nephew's excitement over toys he'd forget about by February. My niece showing everyone the art supplies she'd gotten. My mother taking pictures of moments that would blur together but somehow still matter. I sat on the couch with coffee that had gone lukewarm and watched it all. Felt present in it. Not observing from a distance. Actually there. My sister sat beside me. This is nice, she said. It is, I agreed. She leaned her head on my shoulder for just a second. I'm proud of you. For what? For surviving. For being here. For not letting what happened make you bitter. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just squeezed her hand. Dinner was smaller than last year but better. No empty chairs that felt loaded. No tension humming under the surface. Just my family around a table that had seen generations of meals and arguments and reconciliations. My father said grace. Shorter this year. Simple. Thank you for this food. For this family. For second chances. Amen. We ate. Laughed. My uncle told the same stories. My mother fussed over everyone's plates. It was ordinary in the best possible way. The kind of ordinary you don't appreciate until it's been taken from you and given back. After dinner, my father asked if I'd help him bring more wood in from the shed. I knew it was an excuse. We had plenty of wood. But I grabbed my coat and followed him out into the cold. We walked across the yard in silence. At the shed, he didn't reach for wood. Just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at the dark line where the yard met the trees. I wanted to say something, he started. About last year. Dad, you don't have to. He shook his head. Let me finish. What I said to Angela. I don't regret it. But I've thought about it. About whether it was my place. I told him it was exactly his place. That he'd said what I couldn't. What I needed someone to say. He looked at me. You would have gotten there eventually. Maybe, I said. But you helped me get there faster. He put his hand on my shoulder. You're my son. That doesn't stop mattering just because you're grown. When someone disrespects you in my house, they disrespect all of us. I wasn't going to let that slide. Not then. Not ever. I nodded. Couldn't speak for a second. Then I managed to say thank you. For seeing it. For saying it. For being you. He squeezed my shoulder once. We're family. That's what we do. We grabbed what we didn't need and walked back to the house. The lights on the porch glowed warm. Inside, I could hear laughter. My family. My people. The ones who stayed. The rest of the visit was easy. No heavy conversations. No rehashing the past. Just time spent together because we wanted to be together. I left on the 27th. Hugged everyone goodbye. Promised to visit sooner than last time. My mother packed enough food to feed me through New Year's. My father walked me to my car. Drive careful. Always do. He handed me something. An envelope. I started to open it. He stopped me. Later, he said. I nodded. Put it in my jacket pocket. Hugged him. Thanks for everything, Dad. He patted my back. Anytime, son. Anytime. I read the card when I got home. It wasn't long. Just a few lines in his careful handwriting. Derek, watching you rebuild this year has been one of the proudest things I've witnessed as a father. You've shown more strength in your quiet resilience than most men show in a lifetime. Keep going. Keep being you. That's more than enough. Love, Dad. I set it on my counter. Read it twice more. Put it in the drawer where I keep things that matter. Birth certificate. Passport. My father's words. New Year's Eve I spent at Martin's house. Small gathering. Teachers and their partners. Nicole was there. We counted down at midnight. Hugged and wished each other well. When the noise died down, she asked what my resolution was. I thought about it. To stop waiting for my life to start, I said. It already has. She smiled. That's a good one. What's yours? Same, she said. We clinked glasses. Two people who'd spent the last year figuring out how to be whole on their own. Not looking for someone to complete them. Just learning to be complete. January came. School started again. New semester. New students. Same routines that had become anchors instead of chains. I taught reconstruction. The long, messy process of putting a country back together after it tore itself apart. A student asked if it worked. I told her it's still working. That healing isn't a destination. It's a practice. She wrote that down. I hoped she'd remember it. Winter turned to spring. My second full year without Angela. I didn't mark the anniversary. Didn't need to. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. The life I'd built from the wreckage. The person I'd become when I stopped trying to save something that didn't want saving. I ran in the mornings. Went to trivia on Fridays. Had dinner with my parents once a month. Graded papers. Fixed things around the house. planted a garden that actually grew. Small things. Ordinary things. Things that added up to a life I didn't need to escape from. Nicole and I stayed friends. Good friends. The kind that didn't need to become something else to be valuable. We understood each other. That was enough. Maybe one day it would be more. Maybe it wouldn't. Either way was fine. I'd learned that you don't need someone else to make your life complete. You just need to stop waiting for permission to live it. My father turned 74 in March. I drove up for his birthday. Brought a cake my mother had requested and a card I'd actually written in instead of just signing. We ate. Laughed. Watched him blow out candles he claimed were a fire hazard. That night on the porch, he asked if I was happy. I told him I was. Really? Really? He nodded. Good. That's all I ever wanted for you. Not success. Not money. Just peace. You seem like you found it. I looked at the dark yard. The same view I'd seen my whole life. Yeah, I said. I think I did. Driving home that night, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The betrayal. The confrontation. The divorce. The slow, painful process of learning to be alone without being lonely. The rebuilding. I wouldn't choose to go through it again. But I wouldn't undo it either. It made me who I was. Someone who knew his worth. Someone who didn't settle. Someone who understood that dignity isn't about never falling. It's about how you stand back up. Angela got married in April. I heard through mutual acquaintances who felt the need to tell me. Married Brandon in some destination wedding. I felt nothing. No anger. No jealousy. No satisfaction. Just nothing. She was living her life. I was living mine. They didn't intersect anymore. That was the truest form of moving on. Not hating someone. Not wishing them ill. Just genuinely not caring what they do because it doesn't affect you anymore. Summer came. My third one as a free man. I took another trip. This time with Martin and a few other teachers. We drove to the coast. Rented a house. Spent a week doing absolutely nothing productive. It was perfect. I came home tan and tired and more myself than ever. My house welcomed me back. Clean. Quiet. Mine. I unpacked. Did laundry. Sat on my back porch with a beer and watched the sun set over the garden I'd planted. Tomatoes were coming in. I picked one. Still warm. Bit into it right there. Tasted like summer. Tasted like effort. Tasted like home. Life wasn't perfect. It wasn't supposed to be. But it was mine. Built on truth instead of performance. On boundaries instead of compromise. On self-respect instead of settling. My father had taught me that. Last Christmas when he spoke up. And every Sunday since when he called just to check in. And every visit when he showed me that love doesn't mean accepting disrespect. It means refusing to. If there's anything I'd tell someone going through what I went through, it's this. You'll survive it. Not because you're special. But because you're stronger than you think. And on the other side of that pain is a life you actually want to live. Not someone else's version of what your life should be. Yours. It won't be loud. It won't be dramatic. It'll just be true. And truth, I've learned, is the most underrated form of freedom there is. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.